If you've ever felt a solution arrive as a complete spatial structure, not words, not steps, but something you could rotate and examine in your mind, you already know you process differently. Most people ask, what should I do? You ask, what system am I inside? You've been told you overthink. What you're actually doing is running parallel scenario simulations while others are still processing emotionally. This isn't intelligence. Intelligence is computational speed. This is architectural access. You see the scaffolding behind the event, the pattern before it completes. And because most don't, they interpret your processing as coldness, detachment, arrogance. It's none of those. You're reading a layer of reality most people don't register exists. Civilian versus operator conditioning. Civilian cognition is event responsive, waits for stimulus, selects from approved reactions. The sequence is predictable. External trigger, emotional response, behavioral output. Efficient for social cohesion, limited for structural navigation. Operator cognition is system responsive, doesn't wait for the event, tracks the conditions that generate it, reads the room not for what people say, but for what they're protecting, what they're avoiding, what they're optimizing for beneath the language. A civilian sees a conversation. An operator sees a negotiation grid, a status game, a fear-driven deflection pattern, a coalition-building ritual. Both perspectives are real, but only one maps onto the functional layer. This wiring selects you early, childhood usually, through isolation or early exposure to systemic contradiction that forced you to build your own interpretive frameworks when the ones you were handed didn't match observable reality. You learned to see structure because the surface stopped making sense. Research has identified a subset of individuals whose default mode network remains partially active during focused tasks. In most people, task-positive networks suppress it entirely. In this subset, both systems run simultaneously. The result? Constant meta-analysis, continuous systems thinking. The inability to simply be present without also tracking context, motive, structural position. Clinical psychology has no diagnosis for this. It's not a disorder, it's an architectural variant. But because it doesn't fit normative models, it gets pathologized. Anxiety, hypervigilance, obsessive tendencies, mild dissociation. What they're actually observing is a cognitive system built for depth-first navigation, in a world optimized for breadth-first interaction. Intelligence agencies have quietly identified this profile for decades. Strategic consulting firms, high-level negotiation units. They don't advertise. They don't recruit publicly. But the operators they extract share the same core traits. In ancient systems, these individuals were called seers, strategists, shadow advisors. Not because they predicted the future, but because they saw the mechanics beneath the myth. They understood that every ritual, every law, every war had a hidden function. And that function could be mapped. They were the ones kings consulted in private, the ones who built empires by understanding leverage, timing, and systemic vulnerability while everyone else fought over symbols. You are not the first generation to carry this wiring. You are simply the first to encounter it without an institutional container. No priesthood, no war council, no formalized role. So you've been drifting. Effective but unanchored. Competent but unrecognized. That ends here. You've spent years translating yourself into language other people understand, pretending your decision-making is more linear than it is, watching people mistake your observation for judgment. You've learned to narrate conclusions without showing the architecture that produced them, because the architecture makes people uncomfortable. And you've done this so long, you've started to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you are overthinking. Maybe you should just let go. Be in the moment. Stop analyzing everything. But here's what the documentation shows. When operators suppress their native processing style to fit civilian interaction norms, they don't become more functional. They become internally incoherent. The system doesn't shut off. It just runs in the background without output permissions, burning energy, generating static, creating the exact anxiety they were told would disappear if they just relaxed. You don't need to relax. You need to reauthorize your own cognitive permissions. Every human system contains an observable layer and a functional layer. Most people are fluent in the first. You're wired for the second. And once you stop running from that operational truth, everything recalibrates. The operator manual is not a self-help book. It is a calibration artifact. What we've compiled is a complete taxonomy of cognitive architectures that exist outside civilian optimization models.